Hey, welcome back to the Style Sessions. I'm Roger Mittag. I'm the founder of Prud'homme Beer Certification and the president of Thirst for Knowledge. And we specialize in beer education. And these Style Sessions, if you're joining us for the first time, are really meant to give you a little bit of insight into a variety of different global beer styles that we've seen throughout the ages. And it's to give you a little bit more understanding about the background of them and what the flavor profiles are as well. So if you like it, keep following us. Let other people know that you're doing the same. And the idea is to get a little bit more beer information out there to people who really enjoy beer. So today, what we're doing is one of the great beer styles in the world that you don't see a huge amount of, but it's very significant in the development of other styles, and that is the style of a porter. Now, porters are very unique, and they come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. We'll discuss some of that today. So, as always, what I want to do is tell you the beer that I'm featuring today, then I'm going to pour it. We'll talk about the tasting notes and the characteristics, and then I'll go into a little bit of the history while we're enjoying our beer together. And I always encourage you to get a beer that I'm running, so grab a porter of any type and have it along with me as well. So today I'm featuring Clifford Porter. And Clifford Porter is a little different. It's made in Hamilton, Ontario. Great beer has won tons of different awards over the years, but for me this is more of a robust porter, and I'll talk about the differences in a little bit. So I'm going to pour it into this straight-sided shaker glass because I think it's great for bringing all the aromas out in this particular malt-forward beer that's got lots of different characteristics to it. So porters are the predecessors of stouts. So what you see is what appears to be a black beer on the screen with this mocha-colored foam on the top. But really, when you hold these up to the light, you can see that they're very ruby red. They're lighter in color than what would normally be seen. I'm not sure if you guys can see that at all, but there are some really nice dark red colors in here. Obviously, there's some browns and some blacks in there as well. A lot of people say these are opaque, but when you hold them up or you hold a flashlight underneath them, you can actually see that they're crystal clear. And that is typical of British brewing. We want clarity because clarity means easier to drink. Less particulate in there, less mouth coating. Great beer. So the thing I love about porters is that they typically have chocolate and coffee because those are the dominant characteristics, but they also have lots of dark fruit flavors. So things like raisins, dates, figs. You might get little hints of molasses in there. You might get some dried prunes. It's unlikely that you're going to get some of the intensity that you would normally get out of a stout. So porters tend to be on the lighter side, very similar to what we've referred to in the past as dunkels and Schwarzbiers. The similarity between porters and stouts are the same. So porters are more like dunkels, whereas stouts are more like Schwarzbiers, so you get a little bit more intensity in a stout. They tend to have a medium to long finish, which means they last a little bit longer in your mouth after you swallow, and they tend to have a medium to long aftertaste, and the aftertaste is usually accompanied by things like chocolate, coffee, dark breads. Might get that molasses in there as well. Now it's easy to see why this beer wins so many awards, and I'll talk about what kind of porter it is, but oh yeah, lots of chocolate and coffee on this one. So we tend not to see a lot of porters because porters got replaced at some point with stouts. And so the majority of brewers are making stouts because that's what consumers understand. They don't really understand porters all that well. So let me take you back in time so that you can understand how these beers were actually created and what led them to the next generation. So in the mid 1600s to early 1700s, people in towns that were doing a lot of the heavy lifting were known as porters. And porters were taking stuff either from the shipyards into the town or from warehouse to town. And they were very hardworking people. and they wanted a reward at the end of the day. So a lot of these beer drinkers were going into the taverns and the pubs at the very end, and they were drinking something at that time that was called three threads. And three threads is a portion of a glass or a portion of a beer. Three threads was 1/3 ale with no hops, 1/3 beer with hops added, and 1/3 old beer, stock ale that had been aged a little bit longer, that had a little bit more depth to it, probably a lot more alcohol content to it as well. So they started drinking these things called three threads. So these beers were all mixed in the pub. And then eventually the term porter was applied to the beers because that's who was drinking the majority of these beers. Let me stop and take a sip. It really is amazing. So then, over time, things gradually changed. And they started using terms like robust porter or stout porter. And these implied deeper, darker, richer flavors and more alcohol strength. And then eventually the term porter was dropped and we ended up with a style called stouts. So, more history for you. It's really hard back in the 1600s, 1700s to be decisive about where something started, but all evidence points to 1722 as the origin of what we see as modern porters. There was a fellow named Ralph Harwood who was brewing in Shoreditch, which was a suburb of London. And Harwood had a brewery that started making porters in the brewery. So in essence, this was the first beer that was ever aged in a brewery itself, because prior to that, beers were always aged in the tavern or the pub. So this became the very first industrial beer. And porters were renowned to be the drink of the common person, drink of the common man, because they were less expensive. Clearly, it was a working class beer that had a lot of nutrients in it, was health giving. So porters have always been viewed to be not the drink of the upper crust and the upper class. And that's where we led into British pale ales in one of our previous sessions. We talked a little bit about that. So for me, Clifford's Porter is not what we would see as a London Porter, because London Porter is one style. It tends to be a little bit more fruit forward. It doesn't have as much roasted characteristics, dark chocolate, coffee characteristics. And we used to have that available here in Canada, and it was London Porter by Fuller's. Amazing beer, but just haven't seen it in the last 4 or 5 years. So with Clifford and a lot of what craft brewers are making right now is they tend to have a tendency to lean forward into the stout category. So to me, they tend to be more robust porters where they have a little bit more coffee, chocolate characteristics in the end. It's an amazing style. It really is a lot of fun to drink. You can drink it all year round. It doesn't just have to be during the winter months, which a lot of people think is the way that you do. But in our next session, we're going to take a look at an old style German ale. And Germans aren't renowned for ales, but we're going to take a look at alt beers. So with that, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you want more beer education, go to tfkbeer.com. You can sign up for one of our classes. They're incredible. They give you tons of information, tasting notes as well. So I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.